Well, I'm excited to have Wyatt as a guest today, and we're going to talk a lot about just his entrepreneurial journey in the faith, also to what he does in his business. We're going to extract a lot of takeaways that we can take away to implement in our own business as well. So, Wyatt, thank you for taking the time to have a conversation with me.
Thank you for having me, man. I'm excited.
Awesome, man. So, I think one of the biggest things that I know about you is you own are the founder of Soteria Media, and you guys focus on outbound strategies for Christian entrepreneurs, for Christian businesses, and really everything in the B2B space, but specifically for with a Christian perspective or a Christian lean. Can you just first tell me a little bit why you chose that route? Why did some might say that that's kind of narrowing it too small or excluding a lot of people. Why did you choose to focus heavily on Christian B2B?
Yeah, 100%. Um, so I started this company, this business, around 4 years ago, and I've been a Christian for like 8 years. So still would consider myself a little baby in the faith. But was a Christian 8 years ago, and I got into business 4 years ago. And when I started, I was just kind of doing the same old like strategies of just kind of niching down into a certain like industry. I was in finance, I was in marketing, I was in tech. Like those were kind of my sectors, were the type of clients I was helping out. And it was successful and it was going good. But I think I hit a stopping point like a year ago, where I was like, I don't really enjoy what I'm doing. Um, and I don't really find a lot of fulfillment in this. So I took like 3 to 6 months to kind of just like rethink what I wanted to do, and how I wanted to help companies. And then I thought about, combining my faith, with my business, where I'm going to be helping Christian businesses and ministries with outbound data enrichment, and other, marketing strategies like that, consulting, etc. Um, and I thought it was the right thing to do, and I feel like God was calling me. I don't think God was calling me to stop business because I definitely thought about that. But I think he was calling me to continue, but to help, advance the kingdom, helping other Christian business owners and Christian businesses, you know, get more leads and, help their companies out and just spread the gospel through my work. So,
Can you
yeah.
explain that a little bit? I would love to unpack the idea of God calling you, right? Because the thing about it is that I think for a lot of us, and this is a question that I always really try to provide as much context around because it's a big question we're all asking. What should I be doing? What is God saying for me to do? I think that if you are a follower of Jesus, that's like priority number one, right? Like what is God saying? Is he telling me to quit my business, start my business? And it can be so confusing because a lot of times God is not always going to call you to something that makes sense, right? So there's I feel like there's a little bit of convincing that sometimes also takes place on the back end. Kind of, I think of like Gideon. Is like he's like, I don't know him, and so I'm curious from your perspective, like in your case, how did you know God was actually calling you to this versus you just thinking maybe it's a good idea or like how did that happen for you?
Yeah, good question. I think a few things. I think number one was time in prayer, just praying about it, just my career, um, and searching for answers, in the Word and just through others around me. I think that's number one. Number two, I think the people around me were a big help, just giving me lots of advice, lots of wisdom, and majority of people were like, well, nobody said stop your business, right? Everybody was like, no, I think you should continue. And when I gave, the idea of helping Christian businesses, they were all for it. And then three, it was just like my own research and testing, like, that God's hand was in. I didn't do a whole lot of research on Christian businesses or like ministries if they need outbound, right? I literally didn't. I think I maybe looked one thing up, right, in the 3 to 6 months, right? Um, yeah, so I looked one thing up and then I just kind of threw myself in there, just threw myself out there like, hey, I completely rebranded. I was like, hey, we're helping Christian owned businesses, Christian B2B businesses, get more leads. And the traction was the most I've got in a year. And I think that was a clear sign, excuse me, clear sign um, to pivot this way,
Hmm.
and continue this way. So yeah.
Yeah, another aspect I think that's really cool, because it reminds me actually of a scripture in Proverbs. It says that through a multitude of counsel, plans succeed. And so I
Hmm.
think that a lot of times, we can get caught up in our own minds sometimes in these kind of entrepreneurial creative spaces where sometimes we forget to really seek counsel, and that could be detrimental. So it sounds like that, if I'm hearing correctly, that a lot of this confirmation and the way that God spoke to you, obviously through was prayer and just spending time with God, but also through confirmation of people that you had trusted that
Yeah.
were around you,
Yeah.
which is a great reminder to stay having people around you that hear from God as well. So I think that that's really cool. But I'm curious, in this process, like, and I know that there's something somewhere where maybe there was some discouragement or some, just a rough patch of business, that you may have experienced that may have led you to dig deeper. And I'm just curious if anything comes to mind, and if there's any kind of value that we could extract from maybe some of the difficulties that you've had early on in business, whether it's with your faith or with business or both. Just curious.
Yeah, I guess just some struggles I've learned along the way and went through along the way.
Yeah, I think more what I'm looking for is to know if there's, and if there's not, that's okay. We can kind of move on. But I think there's sometimes these defining moments, where it
Mm.
feels like we're just like really down, or maybe it feels like, man, God, I know you told me this, but it ain't working. It's like, are you sure you told me this? Like, or if there was just any moments, that really just defined you in your faith journey or in your entrepreneurial business journey, that were kind of like a moment where you maybe questioned if you were doing the right thing.
Yeah, good question. I think there was probably a moment, maybe I don't know, like sometime last year, middle of last year, late last year, middle of last year. Anyways, I think I hit in the place in my business where it was very difficult to get new clients. Even when I got those clients, it was hard to get them results. Um, and I just really hit a low point in terms of like the business and also just like my motivation and like purpose of and doing business. And I was very close to quitting and just like calling it, hanging up the jersey. Um, but I think what helped in that moment was just knowing like excuse me, just knowing if I don't ever quit, there's no way I fail. Um, trusting in the Lord, having people around me to support me, encourage me, um, working as hard as I can, and I had to find I had to find my motivation, right? The motivation, the money, the big team, the crazy results. That's all fun and cool, and those are good, goals to have, but it wasn't a good motivator for me. I think my wife really helps me like reframe like what I'm doing this for, why I want to do it, and so like, who I'm doing it for, right? So I think just like when I framed it like that and just like took a step back, um, and just saw the big picture, I think that's what really helped me. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So just kind of, finishing this thought here on the entrepreneurship, like what is something that you're kind of looking at as an area of like, I need to grow in this next? Like what's kind of next for you right now where you're at? What are you looking at where you need to develop in? Or, kind of what's the problem you're currently trying to solve just in your business right now?
Yeah, I think leadership with the team, leadership slash management, because when facing when clients grow, when the company grows, the team grows. And there's only so many people I can handle, but there's also like we're also a Christian company now, right? So like I care about these people's faith and I care about like these people, growing in the Lord and making sure that they're enjoying their work and feel like they're, giving glory to God in it. And I know how it goes, man. Like, it can be hard, depending on the type of work you're doing. So, just finding that balance of like, yes, I'm technically your boss, but I'm also your brother in Christ. But like, I'm here with you, man. Like, I've been a Christian for 8 years, like I mentioned, and I know the battles, and I just want to grow together. Iron sharpens iron. Like I'm not, just to understand how to do that more, um, which I think is like my next test, so to say. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a great place to be. And, I think that one of the things that just makes us different as Christian entrepreneurs is the fact that we do care about the people that way, right? And I think that that kind of governs the way that we treat people, and hopefully, it should govern the result as well, right? Like I think that all people want to be appreciated, and I think that at the end of it, the person who is being appreciated and empowered and valued the most is going to give the best output, right? They're going to be more motivated to do the work. So I think that's a good track. So let's kind of switch gears a little bit and get into some of the tactical, practical type stuff that can help blow up our businesses, right? Like at the end of the day, we are all, Christian entrepreneurs, we have businesses. And, at the end of the day, man, we want to grow them. We want to increase in clients and scale and
Yep.
revenue. And I think that, for me, outbound is specifically like cold outbound hasn't really been a thing for me because I've, like many of people in my industry, I've built a lot on word of mouth and that's been good. And so it hasn't been within the last, I would say like year and a half. And this is actually how we met, where I was looking to do more cold outreach, outbound type stuff. And so, in the process of me learning all of this, I learned that there's some do's and there's some don'ts with cold outreach. Can you give us kind of like a high level overview of what cold outreach kind of consists of and maybe some do's and don'ts, some quick do's and don'ts to get started if you want to start doing cold outreach?
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, what cold outreach is, cold outbound, um, is essentially sending a message. Doesn't have to be email, doesn't have to be, LinkedIn. It could be text, email, LinkedIn, etc., right? Twitter, whatever you want to name it. Um, Essentially what it is reaching out to your ideal customer, um, through a message, and offering them some piece of value, right? That's really what it is. And you don't want to, sell in like the email. Like what you're selling is like the end result of like what your service is, right? So that's what outbound is, like simply put, is just sending a message, a cold prospect. They don't know who you are. They've never heard of your name. Might have, like maybe, right? Depending on what type of campaign you're running. But that's what it is. So some do's and don'ts. I mean, honestly there's a lot, but I'll kind of do like the main ones.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's do do's. No, let's start with don'ts. So don't. If you're doing email outbound, do not send emails from your main domain. Meaning if your main domain's Nike.com, do not send emails from Nike.com. What you want to do is, create different domains that look similar to that and then forward those domains to your main website, like mynike.com, thenike.com, and forward it to Nike. So that's honestly step number one. Um, and really outbound, email outbound specifically. So and number two don't is don't send to unverified emails. Um, so with each list that I create for each client and across the board, I'm even double verifying the emails, right? Verifying, all that means is like we're verifying it's a real email, it's a usable email. Someone is using it, right? It's not some like a 10-year-old email that like no one uses anymore, right? Or just shut down. So that's what we want to do. So that copywriting, so copywriting
And real quick on that, the
yeah, go
verification,
ahead.
what are some of the tools that people can use to verify their emails?
There's a number of them. There's a lot out there, but the main like two I use is no three. Main three I use is millionverifier.com, Lead Magic, and then dbounce. Those are the main three I use. My personal favorite is Million Verifier. You kind of pay along the way, like you don't pay a subscription, you pay along the way. So I like that model a little bit more. Um, so for like $100, you can get like 100,000 verification credits, which is will last you a long time, right?
Yeah. Okay. Very
Um,
good.
s-
All right.
yeah.
And then so let's go to number three. Number three, don't.
Number three, don't copywriting. Like the main thing is like don't talk about yourself. Like that's just not if you talk about yourself, like people don't like care, and you people are prideful. That's just, I mean, that's right? That's sinful nature, right? We are
Sure.
prideful people, and
Yeah.
we like ourselves. So when you talk about when someone is reading email and you see it's just all about the company, the company, the company, and it's not about,
True.
you, you're like, oh, whatever. Like I don't really care, right?
And I even just kind of look at it even in myself because I always analyze when I get cold outreach too. I kind of like take a step back. I'm sure you do the same,
Of
and
course.
kind of just look at what this is doing to me, how I'm feeling about it. Because obviously, if it's good, I want to replicate it, and if it's not, I want to make sure I don't do that. But whenever somebody does that, maybe it's not necessarily just me being prideful, but it's like, listen, I only got time for what's in my world.
Right.
And I just, that's great and that's cool. And I think that's awesome. But right now, I got this problem to solve. And if you're
Yep.
not talking to me in a way that helps me move my day along and check my boxes, then I just don't have time for it right now. You know what I mean? So I think
Right.
kind of to your point on the copywriting, and for those that don't know what copywriting is, basically that's just the text, right? That's
Just a
just the
text of email.
writing
Yeah.
that you're writing. Is make sure what you're writing isn't coming from a, oh, look at what we've been able to do. I mean, I think there's a space for that, but I think
There's an
it
element. Yeah.
it should be motivated towards like, hey, let me help you get this same result if you're having this similar problem, right?
Right, right. Exactly, exactly. Like, so there's that. So talking about them versus you, it should be like 80-20, right? Like 80% about them and 20% about you.
Mhm.
Um, and then there's a lot of don'ts on copywriting, but I think another main one is you have to remember that you are a stranger in their inbox. So asking a big ask, meaning like, let's hop on a call, right? Like just to call a CTA, that's a big ask. And I honestly, I don't use that one often. I only use it one for like specific campaigns and specific situations. But the main thing I'm doing is offering value to these people, case studies, lead magnets, free trials, free, like a discounted month or, something like that. Something that they would usually have to pay for. Like, right, that's kind of the mindset where you usually have to pay for this, but I'm giving it for free, right? So like that's like who's going to say no to that, right?
Mhm.
So there's that. Okay, some do's. Okay, well, do talk about yourself. Do talk about them in your copywriting. So that's just obviously step number one in the copywriting session. And some do's is have a funnel. If you have a website that you're forwarding to and it's not good looking, it's old looking, or there's so much going on, there's so many sidebars, and if you take a look at my landing page, my website, yeah, it's just a simple landing page. I built it on card. It's not no fancy $5,000 website. Um, I have what I'm doing, like case studies, and then like kind of details of the services, and that's it, right? So that's how you want your funnel to look like if you can. There's that. Um, some do's. Sorry, I have to think here. Always have case studies in if available. Always have like a mention of a case study in your emails, in your
Mm.
messages, because
Mm.
people want to see results. People want to see what can you do for them.
Mm.
And try to have it quantifiable numbers, meaning if I book somebody 50 calls in a month, that's great. That's some fancy big numbers. But what if that turned into 200 grand or 100 grand or whatever, 10 grand, right?
Mhm.
That's a little bit more like, okay, this person's generated this company money. Like that's serious, right? So just try to do that.
How important is personalization?
That's a good question. Um, I'd say it's like number two on the list. Number one on the list, no, number three on the list. Number one on the list is your offer.
Mm.
Have a good offer. That's a big do in outbound.
What makes a
Um,
good offer in your opinion?
this is $100 million leads, but go ahead and read $100 million offers.
Yeah.
So that's a good book. But what makes a good offer is a clear result of what they're getting. Not I offer cold email. No, you
Mhm.
don't. No, you offer the end result. What's the end result of outbound? Booked calls, revenue, pipeline, pipeline value.
Mhm.
Um, a time frame is really good. Depends on what type of offer you're running with, but email kind of sticks to like anywhere from like a month to like a year, like that kind of time frames. Like, get 100 calls in the next 6 months or get 100 calls in the next 90 days, etc. Um, and then a pain point call out. I forgot the word. I don't know if that's the right word, but anyways, basically it's just like, so let's say Jesse's relying on word of mouth, right? I mean, hey, I could get you this without in this time frame without you having to rely on word of mouth,
Mhm.
network and referral. So, those are kind of like the main, things of an offer to quickly. I mean, go ahead and
Mhm.
read $100 million offers.
Yeah.
If you want to learn how to create an offer, read that book. That's
Yep.
just my quick like 2 minute overview of like how to create an offer. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll give you a quick hack. I mean, I don't know if you've done this, but I've done this, do this, and I think it'd be great for everybody to do this as well. Is, with the world of AI moving so fast, sometimes you don't even really need to read everything. What I've done is I've downloaded the PDFs to $100 million leads as well as
Yep.
$100 million offers. I've uploaded the PDF inside of Claude, and then I just now use that as kind of a knowledge base and input some information, help me basically using these principles, help me craft an offer. And so
Yep.
that's kind of a good way to get rolling. I think at least it'll get you a starting point, right? Like you might
Right.
need to modify it a little
Exactly.
bit, work it out. And I obviously would recommend reading the book. It's a great book. Very good. So let me ask you this, switching gears, because I feel like there's some mixed opinions about this a little bit in the specifically in the cold email world, right? Obviously, there's a time where everything kind of has its prime, right? Where it's like if you're running Google Ads in 2008 or
Yep.
whatever, it's like, yo, you're just hitting, it's just raining money down, right?
Right.
And so, do you think, or what's your take on cold email? Are we still in the prime? Is it left the prime? Is it still valuable? Should we look at it differently? What's your thoughts overall on just the temperature of cold email as a strategy in general?
I think it's 100% still very, very valuable.
Mhm.
Um, I think if you, like I said, if you have a good offer and you have case studies, you can do a lot of things with outbound. Um, for the people who, and probably a lot of people, but a lot of people probably think it's dead, right? Cold email is dead. I've been doing this, 3, 4 years, and I've heard that a number of times, and we still get clients, meetings on the calendar, right?
Mhm.
So I think it's still very valuable. I think if you do it correctly, I think you can succeed and go a long way.
Mhm.
So I don't think it's dead. I think it's just as valuable. I think, I mean, cold email has been a thing for 20 years, but it's really, really advanced and gotten far in the last like two, three,
Mhm.
um, where we have all this fancy AI and data stuff. And so there is probably some time, you have to spend some time to catch up a little bit on that because those are some advanced strategies. Like there's stuff I don't know, right?
Mhm.
They're always like you don't know everything, so there's stuff I don't know. Um, but I think it's still very valuable, and the learning curve is small in terms of just how to do everything. The
Mhm.
learning curve is just like how to like really, really get there and really get past that like breaking point is just like just fancy tools, fancy AI stuff. So it's not even. I think it's still very valuable. One because of that, but two, no one else wants to do it, right? Like
That's true.
no one wants to do it. So that's why I'm here.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think you're right. And that's why I hired you too. Like,
Right.
was because I know all the stuff and I'm
Right.
aware of all the tools, but man, I don't, I really don't want
It's
to do that.
time. It's
It's
time
yeah,
consuming.
it's time consuming. Let me ask you this because I'm very curious on your opinion about this. I kind of have my own opinions, but how important or what is the role of having a personal brand or an established brand alongside cold outreach efforts versus like basically, right? Like you have guy over here that has 20 hours worth of YouTube content, social content, everything's already, he's got content and he's now doing cold outreach versus this guy over here who's doing cold outreach, but he has nothing online. He has nothing where people can see him. Like, how important is that in the cold outreach strategy, in your opinion?
I'd say it's very, very important. I know people who are good at outbound and don't have a social media presence. That's fine. Um, but I think if you want to build a brand and build something that's going to last a long, long time and get inbound leads like clockwork, like I think a personal brand is the way to go. I've been building mine. I haven't been the best at it, but I've been building mine, the last 3, 4, or like 3 years probably. Um, and it's this, and I still get leads. Like, and I'm not even perfect at it, right? I post here once in a while, and I want to get better at it. And um, I built some form of an audience. Um, if, Also with the recent change, so I'm just kind of starting over a little bit in that area. But
Yep.
anyways, very, very important. I think if you're building a company, you want to build a company you need. If you're building like if your goal is big, big, big vision, big company, big agency, etc., you have to build a personal brand. I think you
Yeah.
have to. I
Yeah.
think you have to.
I think what a lot of people don't realize, is, and I know Google did a like 7-Eleven study or something like that on it. But, multiple touch points, trust,
Hmm.
trust is something that is diminishing, obviously, right? Like we all have trust issues. And so I think that the more you can kind of using the same language, more turn them from cold into warm, right? And we do that through content. We do that through spending time with them through YouTube videos, long form content, podcasts, all this kind of stuff. The more we can warm them up, the better it's going to be for all of these other types of strategies. I've seen it the same
Exactly.
thing in paid ads, right? And I can't tell you how many people have come to me and wanted to just throw a bunch of money at this strategy without doing some of these other necessary things. It's like, bro, you can throw it, like it's not one, it's not efficient, first of all. So if you're just down to waste money, then for sure. But two, it's just not the way human psychology works. Like if I cross your ad and you pique my interest, I'm not just gonna click buy. I'm gonna go do some
Right.
research on you and figure
Yep.
out who this guy is and like,
It's the same way with outbound. When I send an email, the first thing they probably do is look at my website. How does that look? Second thing they do is look me up. Like, who is this Wyatt guy? And then they'll go to my LinkedIn, they'll see that I have followers, I post often, I
mhm,
have connections, and I'm not no like random bot, and I know what I'm talking about, right? I have
mhm.
my case studies there so they can see I know what I'm doing and I've done this before, and I've been doing this a long time. It's like you just said, it just builds so much trust. It builds so much trust. And then people who, I don't send an email to, but they just see me like scrolling, they see a post, then that just keeps building trust, 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 and you just kind of like build this like trust tower,
Yeah, kind of
essentially.
just builds. I mean, I think that's what it takes to do business in the modern world, really, is
Yeah.
it takes all these components.
It's a modern world, dude. Like 10 years, 20 years ago, no one just probably has a big personal brand. Like, we have like the celebrities and stuff, but like the world is everybody's on their phone, man. Everybody's on the computer, everybody's on their phone, and if you're not visible on there, then you're gonna be falling behind a little bit, right? Not that it's impossible, but you're gonna be falling behind a little bit.
Yeah, no, great. So can you give me like, okay, so say somebody's like listening to this and they're like, oh man, I've been wanting to get into cold outreach and I want to implement this strategy. Can you just like give me like a tech stack or some tools that they can look into? Just
Yep.
kind of ramble off some, maybe it's a YouTube channel that you watch or just throw me some
Yep.
resources.
Okay, I got a few of them for sure. Clay.com. It's expensive, but it'll be your best friend. It's basically just a data enrichment center where you can manage all your data, all your lead lists and your copy and your campaigns. And then Smart Lead. Shout out Smart Lead. I'm an official partner. They are my email sending platform that I use. Um, they they are not as beginner friendly. And if you want something beginner friendly, go to Instantly. Jesse's familiar with Instantly. Go to Instantly. If you want something a little bit more beginner friendly, I know the founders there too. They're very cool people and they have a really, really good product. Um, so those are like the two email sending platforms. Um, and for inboxes, you have a lot of options. The ones that are kind of hot right now is, premium inboxes, mailer, Maildoso, Hypertide. Also, you can just set up your own Google Outlook. Um, yeah, those are kind of the main uh, tool stack. There we go. I was looking for that word.
Do
Tech
you
stack.
recommend, because I know that different people have different opinions on this, but do you recommend like G Suite versus Outlook or a mix of both? What's kind of your approach on that?
Inbox, yeah, probably just diversifying. It's best to have multiple like senders than rather than one.
Hmm.
I've used both Google and Outlook and all these like SMTP servers and they're all the same and the best thing to do is just to diversify and make sure that you're not just like relying on one place. Like if I was to buy all Google, mailboxes, and that's the only thing I bought and set up for myself, and then what if Google had like a month where it's like, boom, all get disconnected, and now you have like no way of like sending any email. But okay, so there's that. But what if another person has Google Outlook SMTP servers, their own SMTP server, and they have like this. I mean, they're gonna be far better along the road. So yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. So kind of now switching off of the cold email strategy, and I'm really curious, just inside of your own business, how has faith and how has your relationship with God, really um, guided your journey and guided your, um, just your desire of what you want your business to actually be?
That is a good question. One thing I had to realize that yeah, I mean, as all, Christian entrepreneurs listening in, I mean, faith and business, come hand to hand. Like it's not something that you have to that doesn't have to be separate. And I think I realized that a little bit too late. I wish I started this 4 years ago, right? But I think I realized that too late. So I think the way that my faith correlates with my business is building a team of believers who want to advance the kingdom by helping other companies and glorifying God, right? That's like our mission statement, right? Is
Mm.
giving glory to God and all that we do and helping out these companies and advancing the kingdom. Um, I think if sorry, I'm just trying to gather some thoughts because it's a good question. Dive deeper. Deeper into the question.
Yeah, so like one of the things that has been a pivotal scripture for me in all that I do in my business, and you kind of mentioned a little bit about this, is Ephesians 2:10. And
hmm
Ephesians 2:10 says that we're Christ's workmanship. We're created, in his image. And not just that, but we're also created to do the work which he prepared in advance for us to do,
Amen.
right? And
hmm
so the way that really hit me like a ton of bricks was that, I think that there's, depending on the circle that you're in, there could be a circle where it's like, hey, business and faith are two separate things. It's like you keep your business over there. Jesus was flipping over money tables in the temple, and so like there's this almost kind of like, business is dirty. Like don't bring that into anything in the kingdom, right? And then there's a whole nother side where it's like you see a lot of kingdom entrepreneurs and believers that are like actually solving problems and doing good and hiring people, and you see kind of a different side. And while I don't think that everybody should all be an entrepreneur, I do think that kingdom entrepreneurs do see things a little differently. And I think that scripture is kind of like a prime example of how I see it in my business. I think that the good work that I'm supposed to be doing in this world is not just charitable work, which I do think that that's part of it. I also think it's paid work. I think that who wants to pay for bad work? We all want to pay for good work. And so I think that part of the good work that we're created to do is not just in charity, but also to in business and life and relationships and really in all facets. So that's kind of one way that the scripture and that my faith instructs my business. And so I was just curious, maybe there's not a certain scripture that you have attached to it, but maybe there's an understanding for you of how your faith and how Jesus and how your relationship with God is really just driving the things
Mm,
that you're doing.
okay. Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, and so here it is because I actually have thought about that. Is I want to, excuse me, in my work, so there's like a few things. In my work, I want to glorify God and advance the kingdom to my best ability. And like you just said, like clients now it's much more of a relational thing and trust. And hey, we're both brothers or sisters, whatever, brother and sister in Christ. Um, and we are here with a mission in our mind. And yes, payments come, but we have the same goal in mind is whatever the mission is, spreading the gospel or building a social media platform or mental health awareness or whatever, counseling, etc. So I think there's that. And the second thing that comes to mind is like I want to build a future for my kids, for my family, where they are they are set up for the future and not in terms of like millions and millions of dollars. That's not my goal. That is not. But they're just set up well. And that this is something that can be passed down. Maybe that's not everybody's goal, but something that can be passed down and that will, be here for a long time. And it's kingdom work, right? I mean, it's kind of like the kingdom entrepreneur, right? That's my goal. So I think those are like the two main things where it's like I want to build something that is God glorifying and everybody is in it with the same mission in mind and build something for the future, right? Where my family, excuse me, my family can be set up financially well, spiritually well, physically well, etc., right? Spiritually well. So I think those are the two things that come to mind. Yeah.
That's awesome. No, that's awesome. And I think that that's important to have those kind of goals before us, right? Because sometimes you can get lost a little bit,
Hmm.
just in the weeds of growing business. And for me, I've been doing this now over 10 years. And so I know that there's been times where I'm like, wait a minute, what am I even doing? Like,
Right.
and I remember even specifically, I'll just share this that, there's been at least two moments that I can think of where we say things like, "Oh, I'm doing this for my kids. I'm doing this for my family." But then if we take that what we're saying and we put it against our lives and kind of like, okay, you're saying you're doing this for your kids, but are your kids even seeing you? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, so if
Exactly.
they're not, then are you really doing this for your kids? You know what I mean? Like, because you're saying one thing, but the results of the life that you're living are actually contrary to what it is that you're saying. And so, if you believe in God, and this is one of the things that I'm regularly having conversations with him about, is like, listen, Lord, I know that if you've called me to do this, right? Like, and you put these talents in me to do this, you are not you are not going to require me to sacrifice my family or sacrifice my health or sacrifice my, anything my time with you. Like that is not going to be part of the equation to get whatever it is that I'm trying to get.
Amen. Yeah.
And so in that process, I have to always be mindful that, like, wait a minute, am I sacrificing something that he has not told me to sacrifice? And if
Hmm.
so, then I need to reevaluate my time. I need to reevaluate my attitude, my mentality, whatever it is, because that's just something that is off limits. Like, no, he's never going to cause you to sacrifice your marriage to go make more
Yep.
money, right? Or
Yeah.
sacrifice your
Never.
kids.
No.
Like,
That's unbiblical.
yeah, so you
Yeah.
better
No.
find another way,
No.
right? You better,
Yeah.
get more creative, or, and not to go off on a tangent, but in a lot of those cases, I've found that it's actually my own insecurities that are driving me. It's actually my
Hmm.
own fears that are driving me. I'm worried I won't have enough. There won't be enough. I'm worried in some
Hmm.
cases I'm not enough. And so I got to show up 10 times more than everybody else because I'm not as good as everyone and this and this and that. And really the Lord is like, no, that's not how we work. I do this thing, you trust in me, I drive the ship. And so on that note, I'm curious, if you wouldn't mind, just getting a little vulnerable here, is what are some of the insecurities that you kind of struggle with in your own business and just kind of navigating this world?
Yeah, 100%. I think I was just gonna bring up like right when you started talking about this is like, so I was a Christian when I started, but when I started, I definitely was like, I want fancy things. I was like, I'm grounded in the Lord and I love the Lord and I want to live for the Lord. That's what I believe. But I definitely was like, I want that big house. I want that nice car, like, not a super car or whatever, but I want a nice car and all that. Um, and I quickly had to realize like basically I realized like, okay, what if that doesn't happen, Wyatt? What if you don't get the fancy car? What if you don't get the big house? Will I be okay? Will I be satisfied in my work? Will I be satisfied in my business? Will I be satisfied in my life? Etc. And I quickly was like, honestly, I was like, well, I don't know. Like maybe, right? And I was like, well, I think that's a problem. So I think I still struggle with that today, like not probably not as much, but I think I had to realize like, okay. Like, what am I actually doing this for, right? Like literally what you just said. Like, what am I doing this for? Am I doing this for the money and to pay myself and pay my family a bunch of money so we can get a few nice cars and a big old house and like, live happily ever after? It's like, well, that's just a dumb personal self-centered reason to be doing this, right? So yeah, and I think he's helped me like saying just to realize like, hey, like, what if your business just went away tomorrow? Or what if you don't get the fancy car? What if you don't get that? What if you can't buy that that super expensive whatever, right? What if you can't have the perfect office? This is not my perfect office, but like, etc. Um, so I think I just had to like come down and just humble myself, like the Lord did, and He's like,
Yeah.
hey, like I'm in control. I'm
Mm,
sovereign. I'm all that
mm,
matters.
mm.
Like truly, I'm all that matters. Like if you think your heart will be satisfied in the fancy car that will break down in 100 years, or the big house that will, deteriorate in 200 years, or etc. Right? Then you're just not in the right place. You're not doing it right. So yeah, I think that's probably one of the biggest. Yeah, like I said, still struggle with it. But we're just continuing to lean on the Lord in that and persevere. So
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And that's very well said. And I think that, the reality of it is, man, like a lot of this stuff is a struggle. A lot
yeah,
of this
yeah.
stuff is like and when you graduate one struggle, you just step into another one. Like I remember even just thinking like the struggle was thinking like $1,000, somebody paying me $1,000 for a job was like, I don't see how that's possible. You know what I mean? And it was a struggle. And then you get that and you get it pretty regularly. And then it's like now there's another number. And then I'm sure there's another number and
You
there's
just
another
keep
thing. It
going.
just so you're
Yeah.
always existing kind of in this struggle. And at least my perspective is life comes in seasons. Like sometimes it's a work season, it's a head down. There may be times where you're less available, and that's part of the season of life sometimes. And then maybe there's times where you're like, hey, I'm just kicking back and I'm just, I'm not going too hard and I'm just reinvesting back in my family and I'm just and that's actually funny enough, that's kind of the season I'm in right now is I'm kind
Mm,
of in just like a hey, pull back, do things like this that are important to you, have conversations with guys like you
hmm
that I typically haven't had the chance to have because I'm just so busy working and doing all this other stuff where I'm like, hey, I feel like I'm in a season of growing myself personally and professionally in this other area. And so, yeah, I think that life comes in season.
hmm
It's ups and downs. But so for anybody who's kind of listening in and they're just like, man, I like this dude. I like what he brings to the table. I would love to look at maybe hiring him to help me in my Christian business or whatnot. Where can people find you and get in contact with you?
Yeah, 100%. You can go to soteria-media.com. That is my website. And then also just look that up on LinkedIn, Soteria Media or Wyatt Beemer. Look me up on LinkedIn. Those are the two places you can go.
And that's Soteria media.
Yep, Soteria. Yep.
Perfect. Dash
Means
media.
salvation. It means salvation
Hey,
in Greek.
okay.
Well, obviously Greek or Hebrew, but
Yeah, it
I
sounds like
forget which
Greek.
one.
Yeah, sounds like
Yeah.
Greek for sure. No, that's awesome, man. Thank you so much. I really got a lot out of this conversation. I'm glad that you could jump on. I hope that people take some of your advice and are encouraged by some of the things that we've been able to have in this discussion. That's my prayer, obviously. So, thank you once again, Wyatt. I really appreciate you, brother.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me, man. I appreciate it.